The billionaire's manicured fingers clamped around Maya's wrist, freezing her in place as the elderly woman's eyes locked onto the wine-colored birthmark with a recognition that made her aristocratic composure crumble. In that single, electrifying moment, a 30-year secret hidden behind wealth, power, and family lies burst into the open, threatening to destroy everything the Westmorlands had built. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. A single moment can alter the course of many lives. For Maya Collins, a 24-year-old waitress drowning in student debt and her mother's mounting medical bills. That moment arrived during the most prestigious event she'd ever worked, a charity gala at the Rosewood Hotel. The chandeliers cast a warm glow over the elegantly dressed elite of the city. Maya moved efficiently between tables, her black vest and bow tie marking her as just another faceless server catering to the wealthy. She had perfected the art of invisibility, present enough to refill water glasses and clear plates, yet somehow beneath notice of the guests who spoke around her rather than to her. The Westmoreland Charity Foundation's annual gala was the social event of the season. Old money mingled with new tech fortunes, all gathered under the banner of philanthropy. Though Maya suspected most were more interested in being seen than in actual charity, still the event paid triple her normal rate and she desperately needed every dollar. Remember, her supervisor had warned during the pre-shift briefing, "These people pay our bills. Speak when spoken to, avoid eye contact unless necessary. For God's sake, don't spill anything on anyone worth more than your life insurance." 3 hours into her shift, Maya's feet ached inside her mandatory polished shoes, but her smile never faltered. She approached table 1, the most prestigious placement in the ballroom, with a pitcher of ice water. At the center sat Eleanor Westmoreland herself, the 78-year-old matriarch of the Westmoreland Empire and chairman of the foundation that bore her family name. Even among the bejeweled and couture-clad guests, Eleanor Westmoreland commanded attention. Her silver hair was impeccably styled, crowned with a diamond tiara that caught the light with every slight movement. 3 strands of pearls adorned her neck, and diamonds glittered at her ears and wrists. But it was her posture, straight-backed and regal, that truly distinguished her from even the wealthiest guests. Born into old money and married into more, Eleanor Westmoreland had never known anything but privilege and power. Maya approached from Eleanor's left, carefully tilting the pitcher to refill her water glass. She was reaching across to serve the next guest when it happened. Eleanor's hand shot out with surprising strength and gripped Maya's forearm. The sudden movement caused water to splash onto the white tablecloth, drawing gasps from nearby guests. "That birthmark," Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling as her manicured fingers traced the circular, port wine stain on Maya's inner forearm. Mark Maya had spent years trying to hide. "It can't be." The table fell silent. Maya froze, mortified by both the spilled water and the inappropriate contact. She tried to gently pull away, but Eleanor's grip only tightened. "I'm so sorry about the water," Maya stammered, feeling her cheeks burn. "I'll get a towel right away." "The water doesn't matter," Eleanor said, her eyes never leaving the wine-colored ring on Maya's skin. "Where did you get this, Mark?" Around them, the other guests shifted uncomfortably. A distinguished older man, Eleanor's son, judging by his similar features, leaned toward his mother. "Mother," he said quietly but firmly, "you're causing a scene. Let the girl go." "Be quiet, Richard," Eleanor snapped with the commanding tone of someone unaccustomed to being contradicted. Her eyes, suddenly bright with unshed tears, returned to Maya's face, studying it with an intensity that made Maya want to disappear into the floor. "What is your name?" "Maya Collins, ma'am," she answered, her professional smile straining against her discomfort. "Collins," Eleanor repeated, finally releasing Maya's arm. "And your mother? What is her name?" The question was so unexpected, so personally intrusive, that Maya momentarily forgot her training. "I don't see how that's relevant, Mrs. Westmoreland." Richard made a soft noise of disapproval, but Eleanor's face softened into something like approval. Spirited, just like her. She reached into her clutch and extracted a business card, holding it out to Maya. "Call this number tomorrow morning. It's important." "Mother, please," Richard hissed. "This is hardly the time or place." "It's precisely the time," Eleanor replied, her eyes never leaving Maya's face. 30 years is long enough. Maya accepted the card automatically, tucking it into her vest pocket. "I should really get back to work, ma'am." "Yes, of course," Eleanor said, suddenly composed again as though the strange interaction had never happened. "But do call Maya Collins. Your life may depend on it." Maya retreated to the service area, her heart pounding. She slipped into the staff bathroom and leaned against the door, trying to steady her breathing. What had just happened? She pulled out the card-heavy cream cardstock with embossed gold lettering that simply read, "Eleanor Westmoreland," followed by a private number. The birthmark had always been a source of self-consciousness. Her mother had offered to pay for medical treatments to remove it when Maya was a teenager, but the procedures were expensive, and by then, their financial situation had already begun to deteriorate. Maya had declined, unwilling to add to her mother's burdens. Her mother, Eleanor, had asked about her mother. 30 minutes later, when Maya had composed herself enough to return to the ballroom, she noticed Eleanor's seat was empty. The elderly woman had departed early. leaving behind a ballroom buzzing with speculation about her strange behavior with the waitress. "You okay?" asked Darius, another server who had witnessed the interaction. "The dragon lady didn't burn you, did she?" "I'm fine," Maya lied. "Just a mistake. She thought I was someone else." But even as she said it, Maya knew it wasn't true. Eleanor Westmoreland had recognized her birthmark, and whatever that recognition meant, it had shaken the formidable matriarch to her core. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. When Maya finally finished her shift at 1 a.m., she found herself sitting in her car, staring at Eleanor's card in the dim glow of the overhead light. Her thumb traced over the embossed lettering, feeling the weight of something momentous hovering just beyond her understanding. She picked up her phone and called the one person who might have answers. "Mom, sorry to call so late. Something weird happened tonight." She hesitated, unsure how to explain. "I met Eleanor Westmoreland. She saw my birthmark and got really upset. She was asking about you." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long that Maya thought the call had dropped. Then came her mother's voice, barely a whisper. "She saw the birthmark? You're sure it was Eleanor?" "Yes. She gave me her card, told me to call her." "Mom, what's going on?" "How would she know about my birthmark?" Another long pause. "Maya, listen to me carefully. Don't call her. Don't contact her in any way. I'm coming over to your place right now. Wait for me there, Mom. It's 1 a.m. This can't wait until morning. I should have told you years ago. Just stay put. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead, leaving Maya staring at her phone in confusion. In all her 24 years, she had never heard her mother, Catherine Collins, sound frightened, worried, stressed, exhausted, yes, but never frightened. Maya drove home in a daze, her mother's reaction only deepening the mystery. As she parked outside her small apartment building, she noticed her hands were shaking. Whatever this was about, it was serious enough to bring her steadfastly practical mother across town in the middle of the night. Inside her apartment, Maya changed out of her server's uniform and made coffee. She needed to be alert for whatever conversation was coming. The birthmark had always been just another part of her body, like her hazel eyes or the small scar on her knee from a childhood bicycle accident. She'd never thought it might be something more, something that could cause a wealthy socialite to grab her arm and demand answers. Headlights swept across her living room window as her mother's car pulled into the visitor parking spot. A minute later, there was a soft knock at her door. Catherine Collins looked as though she hadn't stopped to change after Maya's call. Her silver-streaked dark hair was pulled back in a hasty ponytail, and she wore the scrubs from her nursing shift. At 53, Catherine's face showed the lines of a hard-working single mother, but tonight she looked older, her eyes shadowed with something Maya couldn't quite name. Fear? Regret? "You made coffee. Good." Catherine stepped inside, shrugging off her jacket. "We're going to need it." "Mom, you're scaring me." "What's this about?" Catherine sank onto the sofa, clutching her coffee mug like a lifeline. "The birthmark." Eleanor recognized it. "Yes, but how? Why would the birthmark mean anything to her?" Catherine took a deep breath. "Because it's hereditary. In the Westmoreland family, it appears in every third generation, always on the left arm. Eleanor has one. Her grandfather had one." She paused, meeting Maya's increasingly confused stare. "And you have one?" Maya felt the room tilt slightly. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that the reason Eleanor Westmoreland recognized your birthmark is because it's a Westmoreland birthmark. And the reason you have it is ... single quotes. Catherine's voice broke. "The reason you have it is because your father was James Westmoreland, Eleanor's younger son." The mug slipped from Maya's fingers, crashing to the floor and shattering, hot coffee splashing across the hardwood. Neither woman moved to clean it up. "That's not possible," Maya whispered. "You always told me my father died before I was born. A car accident. You showed me pictures." Catherine knelt to collect the shattered pieces of ceramic, her hands trembling. "I never showed you pictures of James. The man in those photos was my college boyfriend, David. He did die in a car accident, but we had broken up months before. I used his story because ... it was easier than the truth." Maya sank down beside her mother, too stunned to help with the cleanup. "You lied to me my entire life? I'm a Westmoreland? How is that even possible?" Catherine abandoned the broken mug and coffee puddle, sitting back on her heels. "I was 23, working as a nursing assistant at Westmoreland Memorial Hospital. James came in with a broken wrist, a polo accident." She smiled faintly at the memory. "He was charming, funny, unpretentious. Nothing like what you'd expect from someone born into that kind of wealth." "So you had an affair with a married rich guy?" Maya felt anger rising to displace her shock. "No, he wasn't married then. He was the family rebel 32, no wife, no interest in the family business. Richard was the heir apparent. James was the spare who preferred painting and traveled to boardrooms." Catherine took a deep breath. "We dated for almost a year. In secret, of course. His family would never have approved of a nurse with no pedigree or connections." "Did he know about me?" Maya asked. The question that had haunted her childhood finally directed at its proper target. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "I found out I was pregnant the week after he died." "Died?" Maya echoed, the anger draining away as quickly as it had come. "But you just said..." "I said he wasn't in a car accident. James died in a private plane crash. He was flying himself to an art exhibition in Colorado." The weather turned and ... single quotes. Catherine wiped her eyes. "The official report said pilot error. But James was an experienced pilot. I never fully believed it was his fault." Maya stared at her mother, trying to reconcile this new reality with everything she'd believed about her life. "So he never knew about me and his family?" "Eleanor, when I learned I was pregnant, I was devastated. Alone. I thought about reaching out to the Westmorelands, but then I saw the news coverage of James's funeral. Eleanor was like ice, barely acknowledging the mourners. Richard was already positioning himself to absorb James's small share of the business. They seemed so cold, so calculating. Catherine reached for Maya's hand. Then I read James's obituary in the paper. It mentioned his close personal friend Anita Blackwell, who was especially devastated by his loss. Anita was from another wealthy family, someone the Westmorlands approved of. I realized they would never accept me, or a child they'd see as either an inconvenience or a threat to their dynastic plans. So you decided to disappear, Maya said, understanding dawning. To raise me on your own. Catherine nodded. I quit my job, moved across town, went back to school to become an RN. I told everyone the father of my baby had died, which wasn't a lie. I never used the Westmoreland name or asked them for anything. But the birthmark, I didn't know it was a Westmoreland trait. Not until you were about 2 when I saw a magazine feature on Eleanor at some gala. There was a photo of her dancing, her sleeve pulled up just enough that I could see the mark, identical to yours. By then I'd built our life. Going to them seemed impossible. Maya stood up abruptly, needing to move. This is insane. I'm heir to one of the biggest fortunes in the country. I've been serving drinks to people who are apparently my relatives while drowning in debt. You're not an heir, Maya, Catherine said gently. The Westmoreland fortune passes through the male line. Even if they acknowledged you, which they might not, you wouldn't have claimed anything. That's not the point. Maya paced the small living. My entire identity is a lie. And now Eleanor Westmoreland, my grandmother recognized me because of a birthmark? She couldn't possibly know you're James's daughter just from the mark. It might have made her suspicious, but she can't know for certain. She asked about you, Mom, by name. Catherine went very still. She asked about me specifically. About Catherine Collin? No, just about my mother. But she seemed emotional, like she'd seen a ghost. Catherine sank back against the couch. This doesn't make sense. Unless single quotes, her eyes widened. The DNA. What DNA? Last year, when I was diagnosed, you remember we participated in that genetic screening program at the hospital to see if you might have inherited any predisposition to the same type of cancer? Maya nodded. The tests had come back negative. One small mercy in a hellish year of watching her mother battle an aggressive breast cancer that had thankfully gone into remission after brutal rounds of treatment. Those databases, I've heard that wealthy families sometimes use them to track down heirs or detect fraudulent claims. What if the Westmorlands have been monitoring for potential relatives? Your DNA would show a clear relationship to their family. Maya felt a chill. So they've known about me all this time? Maybe not all this time, but possibly recently. Catherine looked troubled. The question is, what does Eleanor want with you now after all these years? Maya pulled Eleanor's business card from her pocket, staring at it. There's only one way to find out, Maya. No, these people aren't like us. The Westmorlands built their fortune by destroying anyone who stood in their way. If Eleanor is reaching out now, it's because she wants something. Or maybe she wants to make amends. She's in her 70s. Maybe she regrets losing touch with her son's only child. Catherine's laugh was bitter. Eleanor Westmoreland doesn't do regret. She does strategy. Always. Maya's phone buzzed with a text. An unknown number. Asterisk, I hope you're considering my request to call, Maya. I believe we have much to discuss. Time is of the essence. Eleanor Westmoreland, asterisk. Maya showed her mother the screen. How did she get my number? The Westmorelands can get anything they want, Catherine said darkly. That's what worries me. I have to call her Mom, even if it's just to tell her to leave us alone. I need to know why she's reaching out now, before Catherine could protest further. Maya's phone rang, the same unknown number. Both women stared at the device vibrating on the coffee table like it might explode. Don't answer it, Catherine whispered. But Maya was already reaching for the phone. Hello? Maya Collins. Eleanor's voice was clear and strong, betraying none of the emotion from their earlier encounter. I appreciate you answering at this late hour. I understand your mother is with you? Maya's eyes flew to Catherine, who was shaking her head frantically. How could you possibly know that? Let's just say I have resources. May I speak with Catherine, please? No, Maya said firmly. You can speak with me. What is this about Mrs. Westmoreland? The birthmark. A brief pause. Among other things. I'll be direct, Maya. I believe you are my granddaughter, the child of my late son, James. A DNA test will confirm it, of course, but the birthmark is ... compelling evidence. It appears in every third generation of Westmorlands without fail. My mother already told me the truth tonight about James. Another pause, longer this time. I see. Then Catherine has finally decided to be honest. That's something, at least. Eleanor's tone hardened. What she likely hasn't told you is why I'm contacting you now. It's not a sudden attack of grandmother's remorse, I assure you. Then what is it? I'm dying, Maya. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors give me 3 months. Perhaps 4. Before I go, there are matters that must be settled. Family matters. I'd like to meet with you and your mother if she's willing tomorrow morning. I'll send a car. Maya felt the weight of the request. And if we refuse, you won't, Eleanor said with absolute certainty. Because what I have to tell you affects not just your future, but your survival. The birthmark isn't the only thing you inherited from the Westmoreland line. A chill ran down Maya's spine. What does that mean? It means, Eleanor said, her voice softening almost imperceptibly, that there are medical concerns you need to be aware of. Genetic issues that your mother's doctors would have no way of knowing to look for. Issues that killed my son, your father, though the world believes it was a plane crash. Maya's eyes met her mother's, seeing the color drain from Catherine's face. What time tomorrow? She asked. 10 o'clock. The car will be outside your apartment at 9:30. How do you know where 9:30? Maya. And please bring the photograph. What photograph? But Eleanor had already hung up. Maya lowered the phone, turning to her ashen-faced mother. She says Dad didn't die in a plane crash, that he died from some genetic condition that I might have inherited. Is that possible? Catherine shook her head slowly. Crash was all over the news. There was an investigation. If it was a medical event, why would they cover it up? She also mentioned a photograph. What photograph would she think I have? Catherine's expression shifted from confusion to realization. She rose unsteadily and crossed to her purse, retrieving her wallet. From an inner pocket, she withdrew a faded, creased photo, a candid shot of a handsome man with laughing eyes, his arm around a much younger Catherine. James, Catherine said softly, handing it to Maya. The only picture I kept. I've never shown it to anyone. Maya stared at her father's face for the first time. Her eyes, his smile, the family resemblance was unmistakable. But how could Eleanor possibly know about this single photograph? She's watching us, Maya whispered, a new fear taking root. How long has she been watching us? The car that arrived precisely at 9:30 the next morning wasn't the town car or luxury SUV Maya had expected. It was a gleaming vintage Rolls-Royce, a silent declaration of old money and timeless power. The uniformed driver who emerged to open the rear door looked as though he'd stepped from another era, his bearing military straight, his expression impassive. Ms. Collins and Ms. Collins, he said with a slight nod. Mrs. Westmoreland is expecting. Catherine clutched her purse with white-knuckled fingers. She had barely slept, dark circles shadowing her eyes. We can still back out, she whispered to Maya as they approached the car. And do what? Pretend none of this is happening? Maya touched the worn photo of her father tucked safely in her jacket pocket. I need answers, Mom. The interior of the Rolls smelled of polished leather and subtle perfume. As they settled into the cream-colored seats, the privacy window separating them from the driver glided up silently. I feel like we're being kidnapped in the nicest way possible, Maya muttered, trying to lighten the mood. Catherine didn't smile. These people operate in a different reality, Maya. They don't see the world the way we do. To them, everyone has a price or a use, including family, especially family. The Rolls glided through the city and into the wealthy northern suburbs, where mansions lurked behind high walls and iron gates. After 40 minutes, they turned onto a private road marked only by a discreet W on the gatepost. The driveway wound through immaculate grounds for nearly half a mile before the house came. Maya had expected a mansion. What rose before them was something more akin to a small palace, a sprawling limestone edifice with multiple wings, turrets, and columned porticos. Fountain-adorned gardens spread in every direction, and in the distance she glimpsed tennis courts, a pool complex, and what appeared to be a private helipad. Westmoreland House, the driver announced unnecessarily as he opened their door. Mrs. Westmoreland is in the morning room. A butler met them at the massive front doors, leading them through a marble-floored entryway dominated by a sweeping double staircase. Maya tried not to gawk at the museum-quality artwork lining the walls or the crystal chandelier that looked like it required its own zip code. Catherine's face was a careful mask as they followed the butler down a long corridor, but Maya felt her mother's hand trembling in hers. Whatever resolve had brought Catherine here seemed to be crumbling in the face of the Westmoreland wealth and power. The morning room turned out to be a sunlit conservatory filled with exotic plants and antique furniture. Eleanor Westmoreland sat in a high-backed chair near a bubbling fountain, looking even more regal than she had at the gala. Today she wore a simple but obviously expensive navy dress, her silver hair arranged in a perfect chignon. No tiara today, but the triple strand of pearls remained, along with diamond stud earrings that caught the light with every slight movement of her head. Catherine, Eleanor said, her gaze sharp and assessing. After all these years. Mrs. Westmoreland, Catherine replied stiffly. Eleanor turned to Maya, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. And Maya, in daylight the resemblance to James is even more pronounced. She gestured to the seating arrangement across from her. Please. Sit. We have much to discuss. As they sat, a uniformed maid appeared with a silver tea service. Eleanor waited until cups had been poured and the maid had departed before speaking again. I presume you have the photograph? Maya hesitated, then withdrew the creased picture from her pocket, handing it to Eleanor. The older woman took it with careful fingers, her composed facade cracking slightly as she gazed at her dead son's face. This was taken at Lake Champlain, the summer before he died. She looked up at Catherine. You were there. You knew? Catherine asked, her voice barely audible. Of course I knew. Eleanor handed the photo back to Maya. James thought he was being discreet, but a Westmoreland is never truly unwatched. My security team kept me informed of his ... associations. You had him followed? Catherine's shock gave way to indignation. I had him protected, Eleanor corrected. There's a difference. James was reckless in many ways, but his choice in you wasn't one of them. You were kind to him, genuine, a rare quality in our circles. Eleanor sipped her tea, studying Catherine over the rim of the delicate cup. What I didn't know was that you were pregnant when he died, that you managed to hide quite effectively. I didn't hide it from James, Catherine said defensively. I didn't find out until after the crash. And given how your family operates, can you blame me for keeping Maya away? Eleanor's eyes narrowed. What exactly do you think you know about how my family operates, Catherine? I know James was terrified of disappointing. I know he drank too much at parties and too little when we were alone because he said he could finally breathe. I know he painted beautiful things that he never showed anyone because Richard once mocked his work at a family dinner. Maya watched her mother in amazement. The timid woman from last night was gone, replaced by someone fierce and certain. And I know, Catherine continued, that when he died, the official story about pilot error never made sense. James was methodical about his pre-flight checks. Obsessive, even. Eleanor set down her teacup with a soft clink. You're quite right. It wasn't pilot error. She turned to Maya. Which brings us to why you're here. The birthmark is the visible manifestation of something called Westmoreland syndrome. It's a rare genetic disorder that affects the men in our family approximately every third generation. The women can be carriers, but only the men manifest symptoms. Maya frowned. What kind of symptoms? Initially harmless and usual flexibility, heightened sensory perception. By their 30s, more problematic issues emerge. Arrhythmias, aneurysm, sudden cardiac events. Eleanor's voice remained steady, but her hand trembled slightly as she reached again for her tea. James didn't crash his plane. He suffered an aortic dissection while flying, dead before he hit the ground. Catherine gasped, but that's not genetic. It's usually caused by high blood pressure, atherosclerosis. In most cases, yes, Ellen. But Westmoreland syndrome causes a specific type of connective tissue weak. We've had it documented through 5 generations of family record. If you knew about this condition, why wasn't James monitored? Treated, Catherine demanded. He was. Ostensibly, but he hated the constant medical scrutiny and often skipped appointments. Eleanor's gaze returned to Maya. Which is why I'm concerned about you. Female carriers rarely show symptoms, but the birthmark suggests you have a significant expression of the gene. You need specialized cardiac monitoring. Maya's head was spinning. You're telling me I have some rare genetic disease that could kill me at any moment? Not at any moment, Eleanor clarified. The risk increases with age. James was 34 when he died. His great-uncle Marcus was 39. My husband's cousin Philip made it to 42. And this is why you wanted to meet? Maya asked. To warn me about a medical condition? Eleanor hesitated, something calculating passing behind her eyes. Partly, but there's more. Richard. My eldest son doesn't know I've contacted you. He doesn't know you exist. Why would you keep Maya a secret from him, Kath? Because Richard has spent 30 years building his image as the sole heir to the Westmoreland legacy. The revelation of James's daughter would complicate matters. Maya leaned forward. I'm not interested in your fortune, Mrs. Westmoreland. I just want answers about my father. Your disinterest in our money is precisely what makes you dangerous, my dear, Eleanor said with a thin smile. People who can't be bought are always threats to men like my son. The implication hung heavy in the air. Before Maya could formulate a response, the doors to the conservatory burst open, and a man strode in, the same distinguished gentleman who had been seated next to Eleanor at the gala. Mother, he said sharply, then froze as he noticed the visitors. His gaze locked on Maya, his expression shifting from irritation to shock to something darker. What is this? Eleanor remained perfectly composed. Richard, you remember the waitress from last night? This is Maya Collins. And her mother, Catherine. She paused deliberately. Maya's James's daughter. Richard Westmoreland went completely still. Only his eyes moved, scanning Maya's face with cold precision possible. The birthmark suggests otherwise, Eleanor said, as does the family resemblance. I've already arranged for DNA testing to confirm, but I have no doubts. And you brought them here? Richard's voice vibrated with controlled rage. To the house? Without consulting me? I don't recall needing your permission to invite guests to my home, Richard. Maya watched the power struggle with growing unease. There was decades of tension beneath this seemingly minor disagreement. Richard turned to Catherine and Maya, his expression smoothing into something more diplomatic. My mother tends to be impulsive in her old age. Whatever she's promised you, I haven't promised them anything, Eleanor cut in. I've merely informed Maya about her medical inheritance. The Westmoreland condition. Single quotes. Richard's face pale. Mother, that's a family matter. Maya's family. A DNA test hasn't confirmed any. The birthmark could be coincidental. Richard straightened his already impeccable suit jacket. Ladies, I apologize for my mother's presumptiveness. Our driver will take you home, and once we've confirmed any relation through proper channels, we can discuss appropriate next steps. Richard, Eleanor said, a warning in her voice. He ignored her, reaching into his pocket and withdrawing a checkbook. In the meantime, please accept this as compensation for your time and inconvenience. He scribbled something, tore out the check, and extended it toward Catherine. Catherine stared at the check without taking it. We don't want your money. Everyone wants money, Richard said with practiced charm. The question is merely the amount. He placed the check on the table between. I believe you'll find this sufficient. Maya glanced at the check and felt her breath catch. The sum was more than she would earn in 5 years at the diner. Consider it a gesture of goodwill, Richard continued. While we sort out this ... situation. The situation, Maya said quietly, is that I just found out my father wasn't a nameless accident victim but your brother. That I have a potentially fatal genetic condition no doctor has ever screened me for. And that apparently, you'd prefer I disappear back into obscurity with a check rather than acknowledge my existence. Richard's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. My brother had many ... admirers. Women have claimed to be carrying his child before. None were legitimate. Richard, Eleanor snapped. That's enough. Maya felt her mother's hand close around her wrist. Warning. The tension in the room had escalated from uncomfortable to dangerous in a matter of seconds. Richard Westmoreland's polished exterior couldn't quite conceal the rage simmering beneath. Perhaps we should go, Catherine said quietly. Nonsense, Eleanor countered. Maya and I haven't finished our discussion about her medical needs. Richard, I believe you have a board meeting at 11? It was a dismissal, clear and cutting. For a moment, Maya thought Richard might refuse to leave, might escalate the confrontation further. Instead, he straightened his already immaculate tie. Of course, don't let me interrupt your philanthropy. He turned to Maya with a smile that never reached his eyes. My mother has always had a soft spot for charity cases. Do consider my offer before you leave. It's the only one you'll receive. He strode from the room without waiting for a response. The doors closing behind him with controlled precision. Eleanor sighed, suddenly looking every one of her 78 years. You must forgive Richard. He spent his life preparing to control the Westmoreland Empire. The idea of an unexpected a female one with no legal claim, threatens the narrative he's constructed. I'm not interested in your money, Maya repeated. Or your empire. Perhaps not now, Eleanor said, but circumstances change, which is why I've asked you here today, not just to warn you about the Westmoreland syndrome, but to protect you from Richard. Catherine leaned forward. Protect her from your own son? Richard is complicated, Eleanor said carefully. Brilliant, driven, and utterly ruthless when it comes to preserving what he considers his birthright. He spent decades building the myth of the perfect Westmoreland succession, from his grandfather to his father, to him, and eventually to his son Thomas. And I complicate that story, Maya concluded, more than you realize. Eleanor reached for a small bell beside her teacup, ringing it once. The butler immediately appeared. Graves, please bring the file from my study safe, the red folder. As the butler departed, Eleanor continued, the Westmoreland fortune isn't just old money, Maya. It's structured through a complex web of trusts, holding companies and legal entities dating back nearly a century. Most of these were established by my father-in-law, Harold Westmoreland, a brilliant financial mind but a deeply paranoid man. What does this have to do with Maya? Catherine asked. Harold Westmoreland believed bloodlines were sacred. He created a unique provision in the primary family trust that has become problematic in recent years. Eleanor accepted the red folder from the returning butler, dismissing him with a nod. The provision states that if a direct male Westmoreland heir dies leaving biological children, those children have specific inheritance rights that supersede even the primary line of succession. She withdrew a document from the folder, handing it to Maya. This is the relevant clause. In essence, it means that as James's biological child, you have a legal claim to his portion of the trust to approximately 28% of the Westmoreland holding. Maya stared at the legal language, the implications slowly sinking in. 28% of what exactly? The Westmoreland Group's current valuation is approximately $11 billion, Eleanor said matter-of-factly. Your share would be worth just over $3 billion. The room seemed to tilt around Maya. $3 billion. The sum was so vast it became abstract, meaningless. This is absurd, Catherine said. We didn't come here for money. Nevertheless, it is Maya's legal right, Eleanor replied. A right that Richard would do anything to prevent her from claiming, including what, exactly? Maya asked, finding her voice. Are you suggesting your son would harm me? Eleanor's gaze was steady. Richard operates through proxies and legal maneuvers. He would never dirty his own hands. But yes, I believe he represents a genuine threat to your well-being now that he knows of your existence. Why tell me this? Maya demanded. Why reveal me to him if you knew he would react this way? Because I'm dying, Eleanor said simply. And once I'm gone, there would be no one to protect. Richard has already been making inquiries discreetly. Of course, about locating any potential heirs of James. He knows the trust provisions as well as I do. But how would he even know to look for me? Maya pressed. Eleanor hesitated. There have been rumors. A longtime staff member who knew about James's relationship with your mother retired last year. She was generously compensated for her silence, but apparently spoke to someone before her sudden death 3 months ago. Sudden death? Catherine echoed, her face paling. A stroke, officially, Eleanor said, her tone making it clear she had doubts. Shortly afterward, Richard began his inquiries. I believe he's been searching for you for some time. The DNA database was likely how he initially identified you, though the birthmark would have confirmed his suspicions. So Richard already knew about Maya, Catherine concluded. Before last night, I suspect so, yes. Eleanor closed the folder, which means he's already formulating a strategy to deal with her claim. I haven't made any claim, Maya protested. But you could, Eleanor pointed out. And for Richard, that possibility alone is intolerable. The Westmoreland Group is preparing for its first public stock offering next year. The emergence of an unknown heir with a substantial claim would derail those plans entirely. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the conservatory's temperature. So what do you expect me to do with this information? Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes intent. I want you to claim what's rightfully yours, Maya. Not just for your sake, but for James's. My son deserved better than to be erased from our family's legacy. His only child hidden away and deprived of her birthright. I didn't deprive Maya of anything, Catherine said sharply. I protected her from people who think in terms of birthrights and legacies instead of love and safety, and yet here she is. Eleanor countered. Working double shifts as a waitress to help pay your medical bills when she could be receiving the finest education, the best opportunities. Everything James would have wanted for her. Maya felt caught between them, two mothers with completely different worldviews, both convinced they knew what was best. The choice is yours, Maya, Eleanor continued. But you should know that the trust provision has a time limit. You must make your claim within 30 days of your 25th birthday, or the option expires permanently. And when is that deadline? Catherine asked. March 17th of next year, Eleanor said. Just over 5 months from now. Maya's head was spinning. How could you possibly know my birthday? As I said, Richard has been investigating, and I have my own sources. Eleanor's expression softened slightly. James would be proud of the woman you've become. Maya, despite having none of the advantages your birthright should have afforded you, you've shown the same resilience, the same integrity he possessed. You didn't even know I existed until recently, Maya pointed out. You can't possibly know what kind of person I am. I know more than you think, Eleanor replied cryptically, and I've been watching you longer than you realize. Before Maya could press for clarification, the doors opened again. This time a young man entered, perhaps 30, with the same aristocratic features as Richard, but softer somehow. Less harshly defined. Grandmother, he said, then stopped short at the sight of the visitors. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had company, Thomas, Eleanor said warmly. Come in. There's someone you should meet. Maya studied the man as he approached. Richard's son, Eleanor had implied. Her cousin, technically. Thomas, this is Maya Collins, and her mother Catherine, Eleanor said. Maya is James's daughter. Your cousin? Unlike his father, Thomas showed no anger at this revelation, only surprise, followed by what appeared to be genuine interest. Uncle James's daughter? I didn't know he had children. Neither did we, until recently, Eleanor said smoothly. Maya, this is Thomas Westmoreland, Richard's son and my grandson. Thomas extended his hand to Maya. This is ... unexpected, but not unwelcome. It's nice to meet you, Maya. His handshake was firm, his smile seemingly authentic. Maya found herself instinctively liking him, though she reminded herself that in this family nothing was likely as it seemed. You as well, she said cautiously. Thomas is our family historian, Eleanor explained. He manages our philanthropic foundation and oversees the family archives. The boring Westmorelands, Thomas said with a self-deprecating smile. Dad runs the business. I preserve the legacy. Thomas has been researching the Westmoreland syndrome for years, Eleanor added. He's become quite the expert. Thomas's expression grew serious. Grandmother mentioned your birthmark. Have you experienced any symptoms? Heart palpitations, joint hypermobility, visual auras? Maya shook her head. Nothing I've noticed. I've always been healthy. That's good, Thomas said, though he looked troubled. The condition affects men more severely, but female carriers can experience complications, especially under stress. He glanced at Eleanor. She should see Dr. Winters as soon as possible for a full workup. Already arranged for tomorrow morning, Eleanor confirmed. Maya has agreed to undergo the specialized cardiac screening. Maya started to protest that she had agreed to no such thing, but Catherine spoke first. We haven't agreed to anything. We're still processing all of this. Thomas nodded understandingly. Of course, it's a lot to take in. He turned to Maya. But the medical concerns shouldn't wait. The condition can escalate quickly once symptoms begin. Is that what happened to my father? Maya asked. It escalated quickly? A shadow crossed Thomas's face. Uncle James had been monitoring the condition for years. But yes, when the final cardiac event occurred, it was sudden and catastrophic, which is why early intervention is so important. Eleanor watched the interaction between her grandchildren with shrewd assessment. Thomas, perhaps you could show Maya the family gallery while Catherine and I discuss some practical matters. Maya glanced at her mother, reluctant to separate. It's all right, Catherine assured her. I think your grandmother and I are due for a private conversation. Thomas gestured toward the door. The gallery's in the east wing. It has portraits going back 6 generations of Westmoreland, including several of your father. The prospect of seeing her father's image more than just the single worn photograph she'd only discovered yesterday was too tempting. Maya followed Thomas through the maze-like corridors of Westmoreland House, trying to memorize the route but quickly becoming disoriented. This place is enormous, she remarked, trying to break the awkward silence. Grotesquely so, Thomas agreed with unexpected candor. Most of it sits empty. Just grandmother and a skeleton staff now. My father maintains an apartment in the West Wing, but he's rarely here. Prefers his penthouse downtown. And you? I have a place in the city too. Come here mainly for research and family meeting. He paused at an ornate doorway. Here we are. The gallery was a long, high-ceilinged room lined with portraits in heavy gilt frames. The lighting was museum quality, each painting perfectly illuminated to highlight the stern Westmoreland faces staring down from the walls. Formidable bunch, aren't they? Thomas said, noting Maya's expression. Family legend claims no Westmoreland has smiled in a portrait since 1887, when great-great-grandfather Thaddeus showed a hint of teeth and died the following. Superstitious nonsense, but the tradition stuck. Maya moved slowly down the line, studying the faces of her ancestors. The family resemblance was striking across generations. The same high cheekbones, strong jaw, and penetrating eyes. You have the look, Thomas observed, the Westmoreland eyes. I noticed it immediately. Is that why your father reacted so strongly? He recognized me? Thomas hesitated. My father. struggles with anything that threatens his control. The idea of an unknown heir, especially James's child, would be deeply unsettling to him. Why especially James's child? My father and uncle had a complicated relationship. Dad was groomed from childhood to run the company while James was allowed more freedom. There was always tension there. Thomas stopped before a portrait near the end of the gallery. Here he is. Maya found herself staring into the face of her father. The portrait showed a man in his early 30s, conventionally handsome in the Westmoreland mold, but with softer features, kinder eyes. Unlike the other portrait's formal poses, James was painted in a casual stance, one hand in the pocket of linen trousers, the ocean visible behind him. This was done in Nantucket, the summer before he died, Thomas explained. The only informal portrait in the collection. Grandmother insisted on keeping it despite my father's objections. He looks kind, Maya said softly. He was the only adult who took me seriously as a child. When I was 10, I was obsessed with medieval history. Instead of dismissing it as a phase like my parents did, Uncle James took me to England for 2 weeks to tour castles. Thomas smiled at the memory. He called it educational reconnaissance. Maya felt a pang of grief for the father she'd never known, the relationship she'd been denied, the medical condition that killed him. You've researched it? Thomas's expression grew serious. Extensively. The Westmoreland syndrome affects the connective tissue and cardiovascular system. It's similar to Marfan syndrome, but with unique characteristic. The most dangerous symptom is weakening of the aorta, which can lead to sudden rupture or dissection. But it primarily affects men, almost exclusively, though female carriers can experience milder symptoms. The birthmark is a dermal manifestation, a port wine stain with a distinctive circular pattern. It always appears on the left arm, always the same size and shape. Maya instinctively touched her arm where the mark lay hidden beneath her sleeve. Why hasn't this condition been documented in medical literature? If it's so specific and traceable, the family has kept it private. Hired dedicated specialists sworn to confidentiality. Thomas's voice lowered. Westmorelands are pathologically private about anything that might suggest weakness. That seems dangerous. If research were published, treatments might advance more quickly. I agree completely, Thomas said, with such genuine enthusiasm that Maya found herself warming to him further. I've been arguing that exact point for years, but tradition prevails. I've been collecting data, tissue samples, and medical records from affected family members for my own research. It's slow work without institutional backing. What treatments exist now? Primarily beta blockers to reduce stress on the aorta, regular imaging to monitor for changes, and prophylactic surgery if dangerous dilation is detected. With early intervention, the prognosis improves significantly. He gave her a concerned look, which is why you really should see Dr. Winters. She's the world's foremost expert on the condition. I'll consider it, Maya said, unwilling to commit further. She moved along to the next portrait, a stern-faced man who bore a striking resemblance to Richard. Your grandfather? Yes, Victor Westmoreland. He died when I was 5, so I barely remember him. Maya studied the portrait. No birthmark on him? No. It skips generation. My great-grandfather Harold had it, as did your father. The condition follows a complex inheritance pattern. They continued down the gallery, with Thomas providing brief biographies of each ancestor. Maya was surprised by his knowledge and passion for the family history, so at odds with the cold calculation she'd witnessed in Richard. You said you managed the family foundation? She asked as they reached the end of the gallery. Yes, it's somewhere in charitable trust, focused primarily on medical research and education. Gave her a sidelong glance. The irony isn't lost on me that we fund groundbreaking research in numerous rare diseases while keeping our own genetic condition hidden from the scientific community. Why did you choose that path instead of the business side? Thomas smiled wryly. You've met my father. Would you want to work under him? Fair point. Besides, I have no head for business. Numbers make my brain hurt. History research, that's where my interests lie. He paused at a door at the end of the gallery. The archives are through here if you'd like to see them. I've compiled quite a collection on the Westmoreland, including your father's medical records. Maya was sorely tempted, but something in Thomas's eagerness made her hesitate. Maybe another time. I should get back to my mother. Thomas nodded, looking disappointed but not surprised. Of course, it's a lot to absorb in one day. He led her back toward the conservatory through a different route. As they rounded a corner, Maya nearly collided with Richard, who was speaking intently to a severe-looking woman in a tailored suit. Needed handled immediately, Diane. I want the papers ready by. Richard broke off, his expression hardening as he saw Maya and Thomas. Thomas, I see you're giving a tour. Maya was interested in seeing the family gallery, Thomas explained, his earlier warmth diminishing in his father's presence. I showed her James's portrait. How touching. Richard's gaze shifted to Maya, assessing and cold, finding everything enlightening, Miss Collins. Very, Maya replied, meeting his stare evenly. The woman beside Richard, Diane, presumably was studying Maya with undisguised curiosity, her eyes lingering on Maya's left arm. Diane, this is Maya Collins, Richard said, his tone implying her name required no further explanation. Maya, Diane Harrison, our family attorney. Pleasure, the lawyer said without warmth. Mr. Westmoreland, regarding our discussion, will consider. Richard cut her off. Thomas, I need to speak with you privately before my meeting. Now, I was just taking Maya back to grandmother. I can find my way, Maya interjected, unwilling to be the cause of further tension. Thank you for the tour, Thomas. Are you sure? Thomas asked, clearly reluctant to leave her alone. She's quite capable, I'm sure, Richard said dismissively. Diane, please escort Collins back to the conservatory. The attorney nodded briskly and gestured for Maya to follow her. As they walked away, Maya heard Richard speaking to Thomas in a low, angry voice. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Richard was furious that Thomas had shown her the gallery, had spoken to her as family rather than an intruder. You've caused quite the stir, Diane observed as they walked, her voice neutral but with an undercurrent of calculation. Not many people managed to rattle Richard Westmoreland. Maya said nothing, unsure whether the lawyer was fishing for information or merely making conversation. The birthmark is convincing, Diane continued after a moment, but DNA will be the deciding factor, of course. The legal implications are ... significant, so I've been told. $3 billion creates strong motivations, Diane said with clinical detachment. On all sides, Maya stopped walking. What exactly are you suggesting? Diane turned to face her, her expression unreadable. Nothing at all, merely stating facts. Money of that magnitude changes people, Ms. Collins. It makes them capable of things they never imagined. She gestured toward a set of double doors. The conservatory is through there. I trust you can make the final few steps on your own. Maya found her mother and Eleanor in tense silence when she returned to the conservatory. Catherine's face was drawn, her posture rigid. Eleanor maintained her regal composure, but there was a new wariness in her eyes as she glanced up at Maya's entrance. Did you enjoy the gallery? Eleanor asked. It was ... enlightening, Maya replied, taking her seat beside Catherine. Thomas was very informative about the family history. Thomas has always been fascinated by the past, Eleanor said, sometimes to his detriment. He lacks Richard's practical focus. You mean his ruthlessness? Catherine muttered. Eleanor's gaze sharpened. In business, Catherine, that quality is often necessary for survival. And in family matters? Catherine challenged. Sometimes there, Eleanor conceded, especially in families like ours. Maya studied the two women, sensing that much had been discussed in her absence. What else have you been talking about? Your grandmother's made a proposal, Catherine said, her tone making it clear she disapproved. Eleanor nodded. I've offered to place $5 million in trust for you immediately, Maya. No conditions, no publicity, no DNA test required. The funds would be available to you within 48 hours. Maya blinked in surprise. Why? To ensure your immediate safety and well-being, Eleanor said. Regardless of whether you ultimately decide to pursue your full inheritance claim, you should be protected. Protected how exactly? Maya pressed. Financial independence provides options, Eleanor explained. The ability to relocate if necessary, to pay for private security, to access medical specialists without concern for cost. You think I need private security? Maya looked from Eleanor to her mother. Is that what you've been discussing? Catherine reached for Maya's hand. Eleanor believes Richard may take ... extreme measures to prevent your claim. He wouldn't physically harm his own niece. Maya objected, though uncertainty crept into her voice as she recalled Richard's cold fury. Not directly, Eleanor agreed, but Richard operates through layers of deniability. Strange accidents, unexpected audits, sudden job losses. These things happen around those who oppose him. That's paranoid. That's wealth preservation, Eleanor corrected. The truly wealthy understand that maintaining fortune often requires eliminating threats before they materialize. It's nothing personal, simply mathematics. Your claim represents a potential $3 billion liability to Richard's control of the company. What would you do to protect $3 billion? Put that way, the threat seemed more plausible. Still, Maya resisted. I don't want your money. Any of it. Yet you need medical monitoring for the Westmoreland condition, Eleanor pointed out. Specialized care that your insurance certainly doesn't cover. Your mother's cancer treatment has already strained your finances to the breaking point. Maya glanced sharply at Catherine. How does she know about that? Catherine sighed. Eleanor has been ... investigating us. For some time, apparently, since I received the report about your existence 6 months ago, Eleanor confirmed. 6 months? Maya echoed. You've known about me for that long? So I needed to verify the information before making contact, and I needed to determine whether approaching you would put you at risk from Richard. Eleanor steepled her fingers. I hired a private investigator, someone outside Richard's sphere of influence, pile a thorough profile of your life, your work history, your academic record, your financial situation. The invasion of privacy was breathtaking. Maya felt violated, exposed. Your grades at community college were quite impressive, Eleanor continued, seemingly oblivious to Maya's discomfort. You could have transferred to a 4-year university, but you remained close to home to support your mother during her illness. Admirable, but a waste of your potential. My education choices are none of your business, Maya snapped. Everything about you became my business when I learned you were James's child, Eleanor replied without apology. The Westmoreland syndrome alone made that necessary. Maya turned to Catherine. And you're okay with this? With her investigating us, monitoring us? Of course not, Catherine said firmly. It's a gross invasion of privacy. But the medical concerns are real, Maya. Dr. Winters is the foremost expert on this condition. Seeing her tomorrow costs us nothing and could save your life. Maya felt trapped. The medical threat was too serious to dismiss, even if it came wrapped in Westmoreland manipulation. Fine, she conceded. I'll see the doctor. I'm not taking the money. Maya, Catherine began, her expression troubled. No, Mom, taking their money means acknowledging their claim on me. I'm not ready for that. Eleanor's expression remained impassive. The offer remains open regardless. Now, shall we discuss the DNA test? I've arranged for a private lab to collect samples this afternoon. The results should be available within 48 hours. That's unusually fast, Catherine observed suspiciously. Money accelerates most processes, Eleanor said simply, and in this situation, speed is advisable. The sooner we confirm Maya's paternity, the sooner we can address the legal implications. And if the test proves I'm not James's daughter? Maya asked. Eleanor studied her for a long moment. The birthmark makes that outcome highly improbable. But if you're not a Westmoreland, you would still be entitled to the medical care I've arranged. Consider it compensation for the disruption to your life. The conversation was interrupted by the return of Thomas, looking agitated. He hesitated at the doorway, glancing back over his shoulder before approaching the trio. Grandmother, I need to speak with you, privately. Whatever you need to say can be shared with Maya and Catherine, Eleanor replied. We have no secrets in this matter. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Father has called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. He's invited Jensen from legal and Diane. They're in his study now, reviewing trust documents. Eleanor's composure cracked slightly. So soon? I expected him to take time to strategize. He's moving quickly, Thomas confirmed. He told me to inform you that your medical appointment with Dr. Winters has been his word. Postponed. He can't cancel my medical appointments, Eleanor said sharply. He says Dr. Winters has been called away on an emergency consultation. Won't be back for several weeks. That's convenient timing, Catherine observed. Very, Eleanor agreed, her lips tight. What else? Thomas, you look as though there's more dots. Single quotes. Thomas hesitated, his gaze flickering to Maya. He mentioned implementing the Marcus protocol. I don't know what that means, but he seemed satisfied when he said it. Eleanor went very still. For the first time since Maya had met her, the formidable matriarch seemed genuinely alarmed. What's the Marcus protocol? Maya asked. Nothing you need concern yourself with, Eleanor said, her voice steady once more. She turned to Catherine. I believe it would be best if you and Maya left immediately. I'll have the car brought around. What's happening? Catherine demanded. What does this Marcus protocol mean? It means Richard is taking more aggressive action than I anticipated, Eleanor said, rising from her chair. Thomas, please escort our guests to the front entrance while I make some calls, Grandmother, Thomas began. Now, Thomas, Eleanor cut him off. And once they're safely away, I need you to retrieve the blue binder from my private safe. Use the secondary code I gave you last Christmas, not the primary one. Thomas nodded, his expression grave. Yes, Grandmother. As Thomas led them from the conservatory, Maya glanced back at Eleanor. The elderly woman had pulled a cell phone from her pocket and was dialing with surprising speed, her aristocratic composure replaced by urgent purpose. Thomas, what's going on? Maya asked as they hurried through the mansion's ornate corridors. What is the Marcus protocol? I honestly don't know, he replied, checking around corners before proceeding. But I've never seen Grandmother react that way before. Marcus was her husband's cousin, the one who died of the Westmoreland syndrome in his 40s. That's all I know. They reached the grand foyer to find the butler already holding the door open, his expression carefully neutral. Outside, the Rolls-Royce idled at the bottom of the steps, the uniformed driver standing at attention beside it. I'll stay in touch about the medical appointment, Thomas said as they reached the door. Once Dr. Winters returns or Grandmother finds another specialist. Thomas, Maya said, seizing his arm as a thought struck her. The medical records you mentioned, your research on the Westmoreland syndrome. Do you keep copies outside of the estate? He blinked in surprise. Yes, in my apartment. Why? Would you be willing to share them with me? I want to understand what I might be facing from a medical perspective. Thomas glanced over his shoulder, then lowered his voice. Come to my place tomorrow. I'll show you everything I have. He quickly wrote an address on the back of a business card and pressed it into her hand. 2 o'clock. The doorman will be expecting you. As the Rolls-Royce pulled away from Westmoreland House, Maya felt a distinct sense of relief mixed with foreboding. The massive estate receded in the rear window, its grandeur now seeming more menacing than impressive. What just happened back there? Catherine asked, her voice low despite the privacy window separating them from the driver. I have no idea, Maya admitted, but whatever the Marcus protocol is, it scared Eleanor. And that seems like something worth worrying about. Back in Maya's apartment that evening, Catherine paced the small living room, agitation evident in every movement. We need to talk about what happened today. All of it. Maya sat on the couch, her head throbbing with information overload. I'm still processing, Mom. Finding out I'm potentially worth billions, that I have a genetic condition that could kill me, and that my uncle might be plotting against me. It's a lot for one day, which is why we need a plan. Catherine stopped pacing and faced her daughter. Maya, these people are dangerous. Thomas seemed genuinely nice, Maya offered. Thomas isn't in charge. Richard is. And, Eleanor... Catherine's expression darkened. Eleanor Westmoreland is playing her own game. I don't trust her motives for a second. Maya couldn't entirely disagree. Despite Eleanor's apparent concern, there was a calculating quality to her actions that suggested multiple layers of motivation. What did you two discuss while I was in the gallery? Catherine sank into the armchair across from Maya. She offered me $10 million to convince you to claim your inheritance. What? Maya straightened. $10 million? Why would she pay you to convince me when she's already offering me money directly? Exactly what I asked her. Catherine pushed her hair back from her face a gesture Maya recognized as a sign of deep stress. She said she needed allies, that Richard has been systematically undermining her influence in the family for years. She claimed that your inheritance claim could help her regain control before she dies, so I'm a pawn in some Westmoreland power struggle. A very valuable pawn. Catherine leaned forward. Maya, I think we should leave town for a while tonight if possible. My sister in Oregon would take us in until we figure this out. The suggestion caught Maya off guard. Her mother had always been practical, cautious, but never prone to panic. You really think we're in danger? That Richard would actually harm us? Catherine's expression was grave. The way Eleanor reacted to that Marcus protocol, whatever it is. Yes, I think we could be in danger. These people operate by different rules. The amount of money involved, she shook her head. It changes the equation of what's possible. Maya thought of Thomas's invitation to view his research tomorrow. I want to meet with Thomas first. He offered to show me his medical research on the Westmoreland syndrome. If this condition is as serious as they claim, I need to understand it. We can find other doctors, get second opinions. From who? If this is as rare as they say, the only experts are the specialists they've hired. Thomas seems to be the one person in that family actually concerned about the medical issue more than the money. Before Catherine could respond, Maya's phone rang, an unknown number. They exchanged wary glances before Maya answered, putting it on speaker. Maya Collins. The voice was female, professional, and unfamiliar. Yes? This is Diane Harrison, the Westmoreland family attorney. I'm calling to inform you that Eleanor Westmoreland has been admitted to the hospital. Her condition is critical. Maya felt a chill. What happened? A cardiac event, apparently. Given the circumstances of your meeting today, she asked that you be notified. Diane's tone remained coolly professional. She's at Westmoreland Memorial Hospital in the private wing. If you wish to visit, security has been instructed to admit you. Is she going to be okay? A slight pause. The prognosis is unclear at this time. She's in surgery. Another pause. I should mention that Richard Westmoreland is currently at the hospital. If you choose to visit, discretion would be advisable. The call ended, leaving Maya and Catherine staring at each other in stunned silence. This can't be a coincidence, Catherine said finally. A cardiac event right after she revealed your existence to Richard, after whatever that Marcus protocol is was initiated? You think Richard had something to do with this? Even as she asked the question, Maya felt the same suspicion growing in her own mind. I think, Catherine said carefully, that we need to be very careful. If Richard would move against his own mother, ... single quotes, the implication hung in the air between them. Maya's phone buzzed with a text. Thomas, asterisk, have you heard about grandmother? Are you coming to the hospital? Asterisk, Maya texted back. Asterisk, just heard. Is she stable? Asterisk, the response came quickly. Asterisk, still in surgery. I'm here now. Security knows to expect you. Please come. It's important. Asterisk. Maya showed the exchange to her mother. I have to go, Maya. It could be a trap. It's a public hospital. What could happen? Catherine's expression remained troubled. Nothing about the Westmorelands is public. That hospital bears their name. Maya, they probably own it. Despite her mother's concerns, Maya couldn't ignore the pull to go. Whether it was curiosity, obligation, or something deeper, a connection to the grandmother she'd only just discovered, she couldn't say. I'll be careful, promised. I won't go anywhere private or meet with Richard. Just check on Eleanor. Talk to Thomas. Then come right back. Catherine clearly wanted to object further, but instead sighed in resignation. I'm coming with you. No, Maya said firmly. One of us should stay away from them. If anything seems off, I'll call you immediately. After more debate, Catherine reluctantly agreed, but insisted on driving Maya to the hospital and waiting in the parking lot. 2 hours, she said firmly. Then I'm coming in after you. Westmoreland Memorial Hospital was as imposing as the family estate, though in a more modern fashion, a gleaming tower of glass and steel in the city's medical district. The private wing had its own entrance, where uniformed security checked Maya's ID before escorting her to a secluded waiting area. Thomas was there, pacing much as Catherine had been earlier. He looked up at her entrance, relief crossing his features. Maya, thank you for coming. What happened? Thomas glanced at the security guard who remained at the entrance. Let's talk somewhere more private. He led her down a corridor to a small consultation room. Once the door closed behind them, he spoke in a low, urgent voice. I don't think it was natural. The timing is too convenient. You think someone caused her cardiac event? Maya asked, keeping her voice equally quiet. Grandmother has been on medication for years to prevent exactly this type of episode. Her condition was stable, monitored weekly. Thomas ran a hand through his hair, disheveling its usual perfect arrangement. Then suddenly, hours after revealing your existence to my father, she collapses while alone in her study. Could the stress have triggered it? Grandmother doesn't experience stress like normal people, Thomas said with grim humor. She causes it in others. I've seen her navigate billion-dollar negotiations without raising her heart rate. Maya sank into one of the chairs. This is insane. You're suggesting your father might have ... What? Poised his own mother? Thomas joined her at the small table, leaning forward intently. The Marcus protocol. I found the reference in grandmother's files after you left. Marcus Westmoreland, my grandfather's cousin, died of an apparent aortic dissection in 1976. The official cause was the Westmoreland syndrome, but grandmother had private notes suggesting his condition was intentionally exacerbated. Exacerbated how? Certain medications can dramatically increase stress on compromised cardiac tissue. Beta blockers protect, beta agonists do the opposite. The right drug administered to someone with the Westmoreland condition ... would look like natural causes, Maya finished, feeling ill. A genetic predisposition finally manifesting. Exactly. Thomas glanced toward the door. Grandmother suspected that Marcus's death wasn't natural, that it was engineered to prevent him from taking control of a significant portion of the family holdings away from my grandfather's line. The parallel to Maya's situation was chilling. And you think Richard is using the same method now? Against Eleanor? Against me? I can't prove anything, Thomas said, but I've been researching our family history for years. Maya, the Westmorelands have a pattern of convenient deaths right before major financial transitions. Heart attacks, strokes, accidents, all affecting family members with competing claims to the fortune. Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Asterisk, everything okay? Asterisk, she quickly responded. Asterisk, fine. Still talking to Thomas, we'll update soon. Asterisk, what about you? She asked Thomas. Aren't you worried about your own safety if Richard is willing to go this far? I'm not a threat to him. I have no interest in running the company, and my portion of the trust is secure, but mine are about 5%. Thomas hesitated. But you represent a significant challenge, not just financially, but symbolically. You're James's heir, the brother my father always resented, the artistic, charismatic one who had their father's affection even while Richard had the responsibility. A sharp knock interrupted their conversation. Before either could respond, the door swung open to reveal Richard Westmoreland. His immaculate suit showed no signs of distress or concern, despite his mother's critical condition. Thomas, the surgical team has requested your presence, and something about grandmother's medication history. Richard's gaze shifted to Maya, cold and assessing. Ms. Colin, I'm surprised to see you here. Eleanor asked that I be notified, Maya said, rising from her chair. Did she? It wasn't a question. Richard stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Thomas, the doctors are waiting. Thomas hesitated, glancing between his father and Maya. I'll be right back, he told Maya, his eyes conveying a silent warning. As he moved past his father, Richard placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that might have seemed affectionate if not for the subtle tension in Thomas's posture. Once Thomas had left, Richard studied Maya with clinical detachment. You've certainly managed to insert yourself into our family drama with remarkable speed. Miss Collins, I didn't ask for any of this, Maya said. I was perfectly happy not knowing about my connection to the Westmorelands until your mother grabbed my arm at the gala. Yes, mother's always had a flair for the dramatic. Richard moved to the window, staring out at the city lights. Do you know what's fascinating about the human heart, Miss Collins? Its surprising fragility. All that power pumping blood throughout our entire bodies for decades, yet so vulnerable to disruption. The implicit threat hung in the air. Maya felt a chill despite the room's warmth. Is that why I'm here? So you can threaten me too? Richard turned, his expression mildly surprised. Threaten you? I'm simply making conversation while we wait for news about my mother's condition. Single quotes, his tone shift, becoming almost conversational. Thomas has been filling your head with family ghost stories, I assume. The mysterious Westmoreland syndrome, the Marcus protocol. All very gothic and dramatic. Is it not true then? Maya challenged. The genetic condition that killed my father? James died in a plane crash, Richard said firmly. That's not what Eleanor told me. Richard sighed heavily. My mother is dying, Miss Collins. Terminal cancer. The treatments have affected her cognitive function in recent months. Her ... Paranoia has increased significantly. The revelation caught Maya off guard. Cancer? But she said that she was dying? Yes, that much is true. The rest... Richard made a dismissive gesture. Elaborations of a mind increasingly untethered from reality. The doctors have been monitoring her decline for months. Maya wasn't sure what to believe. Eleanor had seemed sharp, focused, despite her apparent frailty. What about the trust provision? My potential claim to James's portion? Something flickered in Richard's eyes. Caution, perhaps. Or calculation. There is a provision, yes, though I'm surprised my mother shared that particular detail with a virtual stranger. I'm not a stranger. I'm James's daughter, so you claim. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. The DNA test will confirm or refute that assertion. In the meantime, I'm prepared to be ... generous. I'm not interested in your money, Maya said, the words becoming a familiar refrain. Everyone has a price, Miss Collins. The only question is the number of zeros required. Richard reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope. This is a more formal version of my earlier offer. $10 million transferred immediately to an account of your choosing. In exchange, you sign a simple agreement waiving any future claims against the Westmoreland family or its holding. The sum was staggering enough to pay off her mother's medical debts, to finish her education at any university she chose, to never worry about money again. And yet, why offer me anything if you don't believe I'm James's daughter? Maya asked. Insurance, Richard replied simply. Negative DNA results can be contested. Legal battles can drag on for years, creating uncertainty that impacts stock values, investor confidence. $10 million is a bargain compared to the potential market impact of a protracted inheritance dispute. His callous pragmatism was almost admirable in its transparency. Maya was about to refuse again when the door opened. Thomas returned, his face ashen. The surgery failed, he said quietly. Grandmother's gone. The words hung in the air, stark and final. Richard showed no visible reaction beyond a slight tightening of his jaw. Was she conscious at the end? He asked, his tone eerily calm. Thomas shook his head. She never came out of anesthesia. He looked at Maya, his expression troubled. But before she went into surgery, she left something for you. The nurses just gave it to me. He held out a small envelope with Maya's name written on it in an elegant, shaky hand. Maya took it, acutely aware of Richard's intense focus on the exchange. How touching, Richard said, his voice edged with something dangerous. Mother barely knew you existed yesterday, and today she's leaving you deathbed correspondence. Thomas turned to his father, genuine grief mixing with anger on his face. Grandmother is dead, Dad. Can you show even a pretense of human emotion? I'll mourn in my own way, Richard replied coldly. In the meantime, there are arrangements to be made. The company will need reassurance. The board will require immediate guidance. He glanced at the envelope in Maya's hand. Whatever fantasy my mother was indulging in her final hours, the reality remains. The Westmoreland Group continues under my direction. There's still the trust provision, Thomas said quietly. If Maya is proven to be James's daughter, a minor complication at most. Richard cut him off. He turned to Maya. My offer stands until midnight. After that, things become significantly more complicated. With a final assessing look, he strode from the room, the door closing firmly behind him. Thomas exhaled heavily. I'm sorry about that. And about grandmother. Maya nodded, still processing Eleanor's sudden death. She had barely known the woman, and yet she felt the loss keenly, the severing of a connection to her father's world that had only just been formed. What's in the envelope? Thomas asked. Maya carefully opened it, finding a handwritten note on heavy stationery emblazoned with the Westmoreland crest. The handwriting was shaky but legible. Asterisk Maya, asterisk asterisk. If you're reading this, my suspicions were correct. Trust no one in this family except Thomas. Not even me, as I've kept secrets too long to be fully trusted. Now, asterisk asterisk, what you need to know. Asterisk 1, the Westmoreland syndrome is real, but it's not what killed James. Asterisk asterisk 2, your birthmark is not a curse but protection. The marked ones survive. Asterisk asterisk 3, claim your inheritance but not for the money. For the truth in Vault W17. Asterisk asterisk 4. Richard will move quickly now. The DNA test will be compromised. Use only the sealed kit in Thomas's research files. He knows which one. Asterisk asterisk, your father loved you, though he never knew you existed. He would be proud of the woman you've become. Asterisk asterisk Eleanor asterisk. Maya read the note twice, her confusion growing with each reading. She knew she was going to die, she murmured, passing the note to Thomas. As he read, his expression shifted from grief to alarm. The DNA test will be compromised, he repeated. She was expecting this. What does she mean, the marked ones survive? I thought the birthmark was a sign of the condition. Single, quotes. Thomas frowned. That contradicts everything in the medical records. The birthmark has always been considered a dermal manifestation of the syndrome. He folded the note carefully and returned it to Maya. We need to use my private research samples for the DNA test, as she suggested. I have a sealed test kit in my apartment, along with copies of all the family medical records. And what's in Vault W17? Maya asked. I don't know, Thomas admitted. There are secure storage facilities throughout the Westmoreland properties. W17 could be anywhere. Maya's phone buzzed with an urgent text from Catherine. Asterisk security just escorted me inside. They say I need to see you immediately. Where are you? Asterisk, my mother's here, Maya told Thomas. Security brought her in. Thomas's face darkened. I didn't authorize that. Neither would grandmother. Then who? Maya began, but the realization hit them both simultaneously. Richard, Thomas said grimly. We need to find your mother now. Thomas led Maya through a maze of private corridors, using his access card to bypass security checkpoints. Richard wouldn't have your mother brought here without a reason, he said, his voice tight with concern. And whatever that reason is, it can't be good. Maya texted Catherine again. Asterisk, where exactly are you? Who brought you in? Asterisk, the reply was instantaneous. Asterisk, private waiting room on 4th floor. Dr. Evans brought me in, says he needs to discuss your test results. Asterisk. Maya showed the message to Thomas, whose face paled. Dr. Evans is Richard's personal physician. There are no test results. You haven't been tested for anything yet. They quickened their pace, taking a staff elevator to the 4th floor. Thomas swiped his card to access another restricted corridor. This is the executive medical suite. If Richard has your mother here, single quotes, the corridor opened into a plush waiting area where Catherine sat alone. Looking confused but not distressed, she rose at their entrance, relief flooding her features. Maya, what's going on? The security team said there was an urgent development with your medical condition, Mom. We need to leave. Now. Maya took her mother's arm. Eleanor is dead. I think Richard is making some rather desperate moves. Came a smooth voice from the doorway behind them. Richard stood there, flanked by 2 security guards and a man in a lab coat, presumably Dr. Evans. Though I prefer to think of it as being thorough. Thomas stepped forward, positioning himself between the newcomers and Maya and Catherine. What are you doing, Father? Grandmother's body's barely cold. Ensuring business continuity, Richard replied calmly. The Westmoreland Group can't afford uncertainty at this critical juncture. With the IPO preparations underway, any hint of succession disputes would be catastrophic. So you lure Maya's mother here under false pretenses? Thomas demanded. What exactly were you planning to do? Richard's expression remained impassive. Simply expedite the DNA verification process. Dr. Evans is fully equipped to collect samples for immediate testing. He gestured to the physician who held up a cheek swab kit. We've declined your offer, Maya said firmly. We're leaving. I'm afraid that's not possible just yet, Richard replied. Hospital security has the building in lockdown due to my mother's death. Protocol, you understand, Thomas scoffed. There's no such protocol. There is now, Richard said with the slightest smile. As the new chairman of Westmoreland Memorial's board, effective as of 30 minutes ago, I've implemented several new security measures. The implication was clear. They were trapped, at least temporarily. This is illegal detention, Catherine said, her nurse's knowledge of hospital procedures evident in her tone. You have no right to hold us here. On the contrary, Miss Collins, I have every right to ensure the protection of my family's legacy. Richard turned to Dr. Evans. Doctor, please proceed with the sample. As the physician stepped forward, Thomas moved to intercept him. This is absurd, Father. You can't force them. No force is necessary, Richard replied smoothly. Simply a clear understanding of the situation. He focused on Maya. Your options are straightforward. Provide samples now or face a significantly less pleasant process later. The outcome is inevitable either way. Maya felt her mother's hand tighten on her arm. They were outnumbered, outmaneuvered. Refusing would only escalate the situation. Fine, Maya said finally. I'll give the sample, but my mother leaves immediately afterward. Once we have what we need, Rich. Dr. Evans. The doctor approached with the swab kit, and Maya reluctantly allowed him to collect the sample, watching carefully as he sealed it in a labeled container. Excellent, Richard said. Now if you just sign this consent form, he gestured to one of the security guards who produced a document. Maya scanned the form, immediately spotting language that went far beyond consent for DNA testing. This is a complete waiver of claims against the Westmoreland family and its holding. I'm not signing this. It's standard medical consent language, Doctor. Evans offered unconvincing. I'm a nurse, Catherine interjected. That is absolutely not standard consent language. Richard's facade of civility slipped slightly. I'm trying to handle this discreetly, Ms. Collins, for everyone's benefit. The alternative involves lawyers, publicity, and considerable unpleasantness that would serve no one's interests, especially not yours, Maya countered. With your IPO approaching, a flash of genuine anger crossed Richard's face. You have no idea what's at stake here. The Westmoreland Group employs over 50,000 people globally. Our technologies power critical infrastructure on 3 continents. A succession dispute now could destabilize markets, cost jobs, impact lives. This isn't about money, it's about responsibility. If it's not about money, Thomas interrupted, then why not simply acknowledge Maya as James's daughter? Include her in the family without threatening her or trying to buy her silence. Richard turned to his son with a coldness that made Maya shiver. Because legitimizing one claim invites others. James was indiscreet in his personal life. If word spreads that a waitress with a convenient birthmark managed to claim Westmoreland billions, will be facing dozens of fraudulent paternity suits within weeks. So this is about setting a precedent, Maya realized. Making an example of me to discourage others. It's about protecting what generations of Westmorelands have built, Richard corrected, something my brother never understood. James treated our legacy as his personal playground, indulging his artistic whims while I carried the actual burden of leadership. The bitterness in his voice was startling in its intensity. This wasn't just business calculations. It was decades of resentment finally finding expression. You hated him, Maya said softly. Your own brother. Richard's expression hardened. I respected the position he held in her, but his recklessness, his disregard for tradition and responsibility, those I could not respect. He gestured to the document again. Now, the form. I'm not signing anything, Maya said firmly. Before Richard could respond, the door to the suite opened again. Diane Harrison, the family attorney, entered with an expression of carefully modulated urgency. Richard, a moment, she said, her tone professional but insistent. There's a situation requiring your immediate attention. Richard's jaw tightened with annoyance. Can it wait? I'm afraid not, Diane replied, glancing meaningfully at the others in the room. It concerns the board. They're assembling in the conference room as we speak. The board? At this hour? On whose authority? Richard demanded. Thomas's, Diane said simply. As stipulated in the succession protocols following Eleanor's death. Thomas stepped forward, a new confidence in his bearing. I invoked the emergency transition clause, Father, the one grandmother updated last month. Richard's expression shifted from irritation to genuine alarm. What are you talking about? What clause? The one transferring her voting shares to me upon her death, pending formal succession, Thomas said calmly, giving me temporary controlling interest in the Westmoreland Group until permanent arrangements are finalized. The color drained from Richard's face. That's impossible. The succession plan has been in place for decades. My position as chairman is automatic upon Eleanor's death. It was, Thomas agreed, until grandmother changed it. Apparently she had concerns about your management style. This is absurd, Richard sputtered, turning to Diane. Tell him. The attorney's expression remained carefully neutral. The amendment was properly executed and witnessed. Richard, I have the documentation with me. Thomas holds majority control for the next 30 days, after which the board votes to confirm permanent leadership. Richard looked as though he'd been physically struck. This is my company. My birthright, actually, Thomas corrected. It's a family company, one that's apparently overdue for new direction. He turned to Dr. Evans and the security guards. You may leave us now. The guards and doctor hesitated, looking to Richard for confirmation. After a moment of tense silence, Richard gave a curt nod, and they filed out, leaving only the family members and Diane Harrison in the suite. This isn't over, Richard said, his voice low and dangerous. Temporary control is meaningless. The board knows who built this company into what it is today. They do, Thomas agreed, which is why I've already shared grandmother's complete succession plan with them, including her documentation of your creative accounting over the past decade. Richard went very still. What documentation? The blue binder, Thomas said simply. The one grandmother had me retrieve from her safe this morning. Bank transfers to offshore accounts. Manipulated revenue projections, the diverted pension funds. All meticulously documented. Maya watched the power dynamics shift before her eyes. Richard, so commanding and intimidating moments ago, seemed to physically diminish. Eleanor was a sentimental old woman with dementia, he said, but the conviction had drained from his voice. Those accusations won't stand scrutiny. They already have, Diane interjected. I've reviewed the evidence personally, Richard. It's compelling and comprehensive. Richard's face twisted with fury. You're supposed to be my attorney? I'm the family attorney, Diane corrected. And in this matter, Thomas now speaks for the family. She gestured toward the door. The board is waiting for your explanation, Richard. I suggest you compose yourself before addressing them. Single quotes for a moment. Maya thought Richard might explode with rage. Instead, he gathered himself, straightening his tie with mechanical precision. This is far from decided, he said, his gaze moving from Thomas to Maya. Family matters should remain private. I assume we all agree on that much. The threat in his tone was unmistakable. With that, he strode from the room, Diane following after a brief, inscrutable nod to Thomas. As the door closed behind them, Catherine released a shaky breath. What just happened? A coup, essentially, Thomas said, his own composure wavering now that the confrontation had ended. Though grandmother planned it all, she knew Richard would move against her once he learned about Maya. So she accelerated her own plans. She sacrificed herself? Maya asked, horrified. Thomas shook his head. No, not deliberately. But she suspected Richard might attempt something when she revealed your existence. She just didn't know exactly what form it would take. He sank into one of the waiting room chairs, suddenly looking exhausted. Grandmother was genuinely ill, terminal cancer, as my father said. But she was determined to put things right before she died, to correct the mistakes of the past. What mistakes? Catherine asked. What is all this really about, Thomas? He looked up at them, his expression haunted. I think I know. But I need to show you something first. He rose, gesturing toward the door. We need to go to my apartment immediately, before Richard regroups. What about the hospital lockdown? Maya asked. It never existed, Thomas said grimly. Just another of my father's fabrications. We can leave any time. 30 minutes later, they arrived at Thomas's apartment, a spacious penthouse with surprisingly modest furnishing. Unlike the opulent Westmoreland estate, Thomas's home was comfortable but practical, the walls lined with bookshelves rather than priceless art. He led them to a home office where several filing cabinets stood against one wall alongside a small safe. My research, he explained, unlocking one of the cabinets. Everything I've compiled on the Westmoreland syndrome over the years. He withdrew a thick binder and placed it on the desk, then opened the safe and removed a sealed DNA test. This is the one grandmother referenced and tampered, secured by me personally. Maya studied the kit. We can do the test, but what about Vault W17? Eleanor's note said that's where the truth is. Thomas nodded. I think I know what she meant now. W17 isn't a physical vault, it's a file designation in the family archives. W for Westmoreland, 17 for the year 1917. He pulled another file from the cabinet. I accessed it this morning after grandmother sent me for the blue binder. It contains this. He opened the file to reveal brittle, yellowed documents, medical records, and correspondence dating back over a century. The original documentation of the Westmoreland syndrome, compiled by Dr. Howard Jenkins in 1917. He was studying a pattern of unusual deaths among Westmoreland men. Maya and Catherine leaned in to examine the faded papers. What did he find? Catherine asked. Something unexpected, Thomas replied. The syndrome isn't what we thought. It's not a simple genetic disorder, it's the result of poison. Poison? Maya echoed in disbelief. Thomas nodded grimly. Specifically, long-term arsenic exposure. Jenkins discovered that Harold Westmoreland, my great-great-grandfather, was systematically poisoning his brothers to consolidate control of the family business. Low doses over years, creating symptoms that mimicked a cardiovascular condition. But that doesn't explain the birthmark, Catherine objected, or why it appears in every third generation. That's the most incredible part, Thomas said, turning to another page. The birthmark isn't a symptom. It's a genetic mutation that provides partial immunity to arsenic toxicity. Jenkins documented it here. Those born with the mark, like your father, Maya, could withstand levels of arsenic that would kill others. They were naturally resistant. Maya stared at the documentation in shock. The marked ones survived, she quoted from Eleanor's note. The birthmark wasn't a sign of the syndrome, it was protection against the poison. Exactly, Thomas confirmed, which explains the generational pattern. Those with the mark survived longer, had children, and passed on the genetic trait. Those without it died younger, often before having children. Catherine shook her head in disbelief. So the Westmoreland syndrome was actually generations of familial poisoning disguised as a genetic condition. That's monstrous. The Westmorelands built their fortune on eliminating threats, Thomas said grimly, even threats within the family. The tradition continued through each generation. Harold poised his brothers. Victor manipulated my great-uncle Marcus's medication, and Richard ... single quotes he trailed off, the implication clear. Used the same methods against James, Maya finished. The plane crash was a cover story. Thomas nodded. I believe so. And he would have used the same approach with you, Maya. The DNA test was just a formality, a way to confirm what the birthmark already proved. Once he had that confirmation ... single quotes, he would have ensured I developed symptoms of the Westmoreland syndrome, Maya. A tragic genetic fate, just like my father. And completely untraceable, Catherine added, her medical knowledge making the realization even more horrifying. Cardiac events in someone with a known genetic predisposition wouldn't raise suspicion. Eleanor knew all this, Maya asked. I think she suspected for years but only recently confirmed it, Thomas replied. The blue binder contained financial records but also medical reports she'd commissioned privately. Tissue samples from James's autopsy that showed elevated arsenic levels. Records of Richard's private meetings with Dr. Evans going back decades. He closed the file. She was gathering evidence, building a case. Against her own son, Catherine murmured. For her other son, Thomas corrected. For James. And ultimately, for Maya. He looked directly at Maya. Grandmother wanted justice, but she also wanted to protect you. The last connection to the son she failed to save. Maya felt overwhelmed, her identity shifting yet again with these revelations. Not just an heiress to billions, but the survivor of a generations-long pattern of familial betrayal and murder. What happens now, she asked finally. The DNA test will confirm what we already know, Thomas said. You're James's daughter, entitled to his share of the Westmoreland holding. With the evidence against Richard, the board won't fight your claim. They'll be too busy damage control to avoid criminal charges. I don't want billions, Maya insisted. I just want the truth acknowledged. About my father. About what happened to him. Thomas nodded, understanding. That can be arranged. The full story of the Westmoreland syndrome can finally be told. As for the inheritance, perhaps we can find a middle path. A foundation in James's name, focused on medical research and arts education, things he valued. I'd like that, Maya said softly, thinking of the father she'd never known, the artist, the dreamer, the man with kind eyes in the portrait. 1 week later, Maya stood before James's portrait in the Westmoreland gallery. So much had changed in the days since Eleanor's death. Richard had been removed from his position pending investigation into financial irregularities. The DNA test had confirmed Maya's paternity beyond any doubt. The Marcus protocol had been exposed as a systematic method of eliminating family members who threatened the power structure, including, ultimately, James Westmoreland. The portrait seemed different now that she knew the truth, not just about her connection to him, but about the birthmark they shared. Not a curse, but protection. Not a sign of weakness, but of survival. She heard footsteps and turned to find Thomas approaching. The paperwork is ready whenever you are, he said. The James Westmoreland Foundation will be officially established today. Thank you, Maya said. For everything. Single quotes, Thomas smiled, a genuine expression so unlike the practiced Westmoreland reserve. We're family, Maya. The kind that protects rather than destroys. Maya touched her arm where the circular birthmark lay hidden beneath her sleeve. The mark that had drawn Eleanor's attention that night at the gala. The mark that had ultimately brought her father's story to light. The marked ones survived, she murmured, feeling a connection across generations to James, to Eleanor, and to whatever future she would now create, marked not just by wealth or power but by the truth finally revealed.